listening to Radio Sputnik. Telling the untold.
Welcome back to Political Misfits on Radio Sputnik, where we bring you news, politics, and culture without the red and blue treatment. Bob Schlehuber here with Michelle Witte. Get ready to go against the grain, my friends. We're here with you another hour. Michelle, where's the scarf from you're wearing today? I like it.
It's from Palestine.
Nice.
Thank you.
Looks good. Looks good on you.
Thanks.
We'll talk a little bit more about Gaza and Palestine at 1:30 when we trash some people.
Oh, yeah.
Just way too much. Just like, you just don't have to always weigh in on stuff. You can just pass. I'm going to pass this time. We'll tell you more about those people that I'm alluding to. Aaron David Miller. We'll talk about him at 1:30.
Bret Stephens, too.
Bret Stephens, but not right now, Michelle.
Nope.
We'll trash them at 1:30.
Yep.
Both of them trash Aaron David Miller, Bret Stephens. But we're not going to say who it is until we get there at 1:30.
Just said several people who it's going to be.
Well, spoiler alert, Aaron David Miller. Okay. Lots to cover in the next hour, including my vendettas. We're going to talk about this freak out over inflation. Spoiler alert, I think concerns are inflated, Michelle.
Wow.
We're also going to be talking about what deep economic inequality will mean for the fabric of our society and why us millennials are continuing to get fleeced by our baby booming parents. Give me some of that I just want a little piece of the pie.
I want a big one.
I want more than 4%.
Like a very large piece of the pie.
I want more than 4% of the pie. That's what I'm saying. And I don't want Mark Zuckerberg to get a half of my 4%. I'm just going to throw that out there. Give us a call if you want. Rarely do we open up the lines. But if you want to call in today, 202-521-1320, go ahead and call in. If you call in right now, you not only talk to me and Michelle, you also get to talk to our next guest, the famous, the one and only Steve Grumbine, the founder and CEO of the nonprofits Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action, and host of the podcast Macro in Cheese. Stephen Grumbine, how you feeling today?
Man, I am happy, but that was one heck of an intro, man.
I know. I was trying to think if I ever get the opportunity and privilege to meet you in person, what I'll have you autograph for me. Ironically, maybe $100 bill, $5 bill.
I was gonna say maybe I'll sign one of your Doge coins.
Yeah.
I missed the boat on that one. I had that moment. We were doing the story, Michelle.
It keeps going up and down. I mean, I don't know if you've missed the boat, Bob.
Gambling. You can always gamble. Don't outthink the market. You can never outthink the market. That's what Warren Buffett says.
That ping pong ball is bouncing.
It's all over the place.
38 cents 1 minute, next minute 74 cents back down. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Steve, we are not going to keep you in the economic ghetto for this entire conversation because I really do want to talk mystery energy weapons and some other fun stuff because it's Friday. But I did want to start off getting your thoughts on the one piece described it as brisk price growth now being documented. We had the Bureau of Labor Statistics coming out earlier this week saying the consumer price index was 4.2% higher this April than it was a year earlier. And the April producer price index hit 6.2% year on year. This is the fastest growth in more than a decade. This is all from a Washington Post opinion piece. And so, we're seeing all the headlines now that see either it's time to freak out about inflation or there's no need to freak out about inflation. And so maybe you can tell us whether we should be freaking out, yelling at people not to freak out. What do these price increases really mean? Like, how much are regular folks really feeling them? And what do you make of the coverage of the great sort of economic rebound so far?
Okay, so lots to unpack there. But first things first, yes, yell from the rooftops. There's nothing to be afraid of, okay?
Right.
I think it's important to understand that if you look at April of last year, where were we? We were just shutting down the entire economy.
Right.
We were laying people off in the hundreds of thousands.
Right.
And we were literally bleeding out jobs. Hotels probably would pay you to stay in their rooms. Airplanes were practically giving away flights. Here, please come fly. Do something. Come on, please, right? And interestingly enough, as we're opening the economy back up, as people have gotten vaccinated, weirdly, suddenly, there's a mad dash to use these services. And hotels are filling up and airplanes are filling up and all these different things are happening where the supply chain for those devices and for those services was set at a certain thing. They laid a bunch of people off. They didn't have the quote-unquote financial wherewithal to bring them back on, so to speak. So now all of a sudden you're seeing more people back to work with more money to spend, an economy slowly but surely opening up. I mean, you see the Grateful Dead, or I should say Dead and Company, already booking their concert series for this year.
Right.
And so you've got this whole thing happening, but the supply chain broke. It's still broke.
Yeah.
We didn't have important things like, semiconductors and chicken is now going to be in short supply, chlorine issues for you pool goers out there. There's a lot of shortages that are going to drive up price. But it's important to understand what inflation is. Inflation is the price is going up, but if you're paying that price, that means somebody's income is going up also. Okay? So it's not always a zero-sum game. It's important to look where that money is going. But what you're seeing is the results of a year of an entire global shutdown, economic shutdown, and you're now watching the effects of people doing a mad dash to the beach, mad dash to, purchasing vehicles or doing home repairs or whatever. And resources will be scarce when the supply chain has not kept up. It is not ready for this new shock. So, you're going to see some price increase.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at the hubris of the American economy and capitalists that just assume that the system can take shock after shock after shock, Steve, and not actually, show any signs of scarring. And that's what's remarkable in this moment. It's like, I can't believe people aren't back to work right away, days after we reopened after a year of being shut down. My goodness.
It doesn't happen that way, does it? It's ridiculous. But, it's important to understand the causes of these sorts of things because, you're right. The headlines everywhere are just completely giving up the ghost about this inflation stuff. But I think that, John Harvey, who is a great professor out of TCU, wrote a fantastic piece in Forbes. And I strongly suggest reading it. It's 4 reasons to stop panicking over inflation. And he lists 4 of them right off the bat. One was inflation doesn't hurt everyone because it's a redistribution, not a net loss of income. The second one is inflation triggers useful changes to production and consumption patterns. So if it's too expensive, you're not going to buy it. And the flip side is that if there's a demand for your product, you're going to produce more of it. So it's one of those self-healing supply chain things that, as we reopen the economy and we start getting back to some of these things, I'm not saying that's a good thing, by the way. I'm just saying that it's not a bad thing. The other one, the third one he said was inflation can result from socially beneficial development like raising wages. Hey, what do you know? I mean, it's a net infusion, so people have more money in their pocket. It's not hyperinflation where you reject the currency. It's just any time you add more buying power to the population and you look at the supply and you look at the cost of doing business, well, naturally the cost of doing business is going to increase. It will. And then the last one, this is really super important. I hope you guys will hold this one near and dear to your heart. There's a difference between stocks and flows. Stocks being just cash sitting on a table, flows being you actually spending that money. And a stock can never create inflation. So when you hear people say they're printing money, it's causing inflation, you know that they just don't know what they're talking about. That has nothing to do with it, not even partially what to do with it, because ultimately it's about the flows. And what you see is that more people have money in their pockets once again. They're back to work. The economy's opening up, et cetera. And so now they've got pent-up demand that they've been kind of squashing for the last year that they can exert. So you're going to see that. So that's the flow. And flows, spending, can indeed cause inflationary pressures because if supply is not there to meet demand, you're going to have a run on whatever that good or service is. So that really is an important distinction. So don't let anyone ever tell you money growth is what's causing inflation. It can't. The only thing that can cause inflation in this sense is the actual flows, spending on things with scarce resources that are now being driven up by bidding.
So let me ask you, Stephen, this is a bit of a tough question because I want to ask you what journalists like Chuck Todd are doing when they miss the point on inflation and confuse things. And it's a tough question on Chuck Talks. I realize his head is so far up his butt that I would hate to send anyone up his butt to figure out what it is he's thinking.
Oh, no.
But what is it? I mean, is it a corporate hack? Is it laziness? Is it just this is what kids in journalist school are taught about how the economy works? What's happening with all of these different journalists telling us about, what about inflation and this whole concept too about how we're going to pay for things, this constant wrongness? Where is it coming from?
I think there's about 3 or 4 things, right? Number one is that economics has been taught a certain way over a long period of time, and that economics message has been put into our sitcoms. It's been put into everything. So it's reinforced at every level in our society. And lo and behold, every time these, clerics of their realm make a prediction, it's wrong. So at some point in time, we should recognize that the orthodox economics profession is based in mysticism, not anything factual. That said, the other thing is that these hacks on the media and stuff like that, they have a boss. And these narrative, they don't want to be held back. They don't want to be marginalized by speaking truth. And so they stay in this little bubble sphere that they've created, this little ecosystem of fake news. And that's really, I think, largely what comes from it, because we're out here with the counter narrative, and it's almost like throwing a ball off of a brick wall. It literally doesn't stick with folks.
Yeah.
And I do believe it's a massive amount of indoctrination, number one. And number two, I believe it's also been a ploy of the very wealthy for a very long time to make us, as Obama said, eat our peas. And so it's all part of disciplining labor to make sure that they're willing to accept less and to be fearful of their own prosperity. And I think that is baked into their thinking, and that's why these hacks say what they say.
Yeah, and speaking of hacks, Joe Biden also, I thought, has been really impressive lately in his ability to propagate this idea that billionaires are fine, as he said in his speech, unlike some of my Democratic counterparts who don't believe billionaires should exist. I think they should exist. Right. They should just pay their fair share. And I just thought this was a really rich comment by how rich, get it there, Michelle? The pun's just rolling off the top of the head today. Pay my fair share, this idea, pay a fair share. And I think it's just a great rhetorical device by him because it distracts from the idea of, one, there shouldn't be billionaires, and two, as if the fair share is set by anybody but those same billionaires and corporate interests. So it makes it sound like, the fair share, like that. He is right. You can see how it is distracting and how some of this messaging, though it's false, does capture people's imagination.
Absolutely. It's funny. We had Mark Cuban on with Pavlina Trineva a while back, and Mark Cuban himself said, I don't care if you raise taxes on me. You can't touch me. I'll always find a way to make more money out of this.
Yeah.
And he literally, he was saying it right. I would love to bring that clip sometime for you all to hear, but he was genuine, and he's a relatively woke dude for a billionaire. And, I'm not saying he's perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but, he's got some fairly progressive sensibilities at times. And he flat out said, you can't hurt us. You can't touch us. As long as we revere the rich, as long as we feel like we need their tax money, their fair share to pay for things, we will always maintain this class system that makes us all feel like we don't deserve anything. We need to pretend like the wealthy, the billionaire class doesn't exist, either tax them out of existence, make them not exist. But either way, let's realize that we are in no way, shape, or form dependent on their money. Their money doesn't buy us anything, at least at the federal level. At the state level, that's a different story. But just the point is that we need to render the rich irrelevant and do this stuff with or without their permission. And the whole idea of, raise my taxes, like the guy Dan Price. So, raise my taxes. I'm willing. I'm do it.
Right.
It's all virtue signaling. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean a hill of beans. I mean, what's his name? The big investor comes out, Warren Buffett.
Yeah,
tax me. Oh, Gates, yes, you must tax me. They want you to tax them. Why? Because, number one, it's not going to hurt them at all. Number two, they are able to say, see, we're doing our fair share. We're paying the lion's share. See, we are really good for the world. And they're not. They need to be gone. But this whole idea here is based 100% on deifying the rich instead of being aware of the fact that they don't need to exist at all.
Yeah. And I was talking to a very capitalist family member of mine, and he was basically saying, I thought was just kind of striking, Steve, because it does show the difference of worlds people exist in here in the United States. He goes, I no longer have insurance, life insurance, because I've self-insured myself. He doesn't need to take out a risk, anymore and pay into something because he's saved enough money that anything he's able to put into an insurance scheme is going to pay less than just saving the money himself. And two, he goes, I basically just spend my time trying to find ways not to pay taxes. Like, that's the mindset. It's like a game for these people. It's like he's got so much money that he's at the point now, all he can do really is just try to find creative and interesting ways to not pay taxes. And that's where I think our wealthy people are so like, sure, tax me on my income, but I'm going to find 9 other ways to hide the money elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. They are not in any way, shape, or form required for us to do great things. So again, I want to make that point.
Yeah.
Let's make them irrelevant.
Yeah. Steve, I just had one last question in regards to the economic inequality where does it leave us as a people? I was saying there about millennials control just 4.6% of U.S. wealth. That's far behind the 21% boomers had at the same age, the generation before. 3 millennials, Mark Zuckerberg, Dustin Moskovitz, and the co-founders of Facebook and Walmart heir Lucas Walton, hold $1 of every $40 among the millennial generation. Maybe another way to phrase that, kind of, what was the prelude to Occupy? And are we walking into that same situation? And if not Occupy, just where does that leave us what are we doing here as a people when our economics have reached this point?
Well, I think first off, just to get a picture of what you just said, remember the greatest generation and the boomers, none of them carried any significant college debt. Right now, millennials and the average school person carrying student debt, it's up there in the $2 trillion range. Okay. And this is this is like, putting a 1,000-pound gorilla on your back and asking you to run a sprint. And we've literally hamstrung an entire generation of people with this, and they haven't even purchased a home. Back in the day, those same people also were able to purchase a home from Sears Roebuck catalog for $10,000. And boom, there you go. Instant house, home ownership. What a beautiful thing. Well, now the millennials, not only do they start off before they get married with $100,000 of student debt, but they also sit there and can't buy a house because of student debt. And before they have their first real career job, they're carrying a mortgage payment and student debt. So I think you don't have to look much further than student debt, if you didn't hear that pattern, for this terrible, diversion, this incredibly bad scenario that we have in this country right now. It's horrible. Mm-hmm. It's awful. Mm-hmm.
I want to pick up here, Steve, on the theme of the mysticism of economics. Some might call sort of flimflammery, because I see that you've been tweeting a bit about Elon Musk, Bitcoin, and Tesla, which is something I've been wanting to talk about a little bit too. Last month, we saw that Tesla got itself another profitable quarter, but not from selling cars. Rather, it was from selling Bitcoin holdings and selling emissions credits to other car makers, which, I am not the first person to point out, seems kind of scammy. So I wanted to get into that, and also just get into this weird, like when you're talking about this carbon trading stuff, emissions trading, how green a company are you? If you are making neato, very expensive electric cars, but you are just earning money from selling your carbon emissions allowances elsewhere, because it's still, if they're using them, it's still going into the air, right? So you might as well be doing the emitting yourself. And so I wondered if you just wanted to get in here on the relationship between Tesla, Bitcoin, and Musk, and whether Musk, I don't know, just how scammy this whole Tesla thing is revealing itself to be.
They stopped doing Bitcoin because of its damage to the environment.
Right. I mean, that's as of, we don't even need to get into that update, because, they've already made their bones,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bitcoin, just remember this, I'm going to say this anytime you bring me back on. And Bitcoin is literally a commodity, right? It's a speculative commodity, and Dogecoin and all the other things, they're just speculative commodities. And all you got to do is, just for grins, put $2 on some silly coin somewhere just to watch, or whatever the minimum you can do. and just go in there and watch how insane it is. You go to bed at night, you feel like a millionaire. You wake up the next morning, you're ready to jump out of a tower.
Mm.
I mean, it's that insane. It's that flatulent, like just big, huge wind, garbage wind of nonsense. And there's been a lot of people that made a lot of money overnight. And Elon Musk is one of the big crypto boys out there running off. And I do find it absolutely fascinating that they would be talking like a green company while simultaneously knowing that Bitcoin is destroying the Amazon with its power suck. As there's so much wrong with this, it's not funny.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the selling credits goes and carbon credits and things like that, I think this was always the intention with that carbon credit system.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was always the intent to be able to allow companies to have that, like almost a carbon economy.
Mm-hmm.
And these are just basically, once again, another carbon credit, just like we talk about the dollar being a tax credit. The carbon credit, it's important because if you don't have enough carbon credits, you're going to end up getting fine fees and penalties for doing your thing. So I think that, yes, it allows certain people to get around it, but the flip side to that is that they have a contained amount of carbon based on those credits. And based on the penalties that they can exert, they can put a company out of business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's ample incentive there. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. But I just want to say that it's not a completely horrible thing. If you're going to live in a capitalist world, you may as well allow them to play their capital games while simultaneously pinching closer and closer to the bone to make sure that we can survive and eliminate the carbon footprint that these companies have been putting into the atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, sure. It's also just about, Elon Musk is this guy who's, made himself into a celebrity, and he is now not making his money on Tesla, right? Not making his money on, I think, any of his other
giant holes in the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I genuinely do not know if SpaceX makes money or not. But certainly he's already gotten in trouble for saying things in public that, because as you say, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, they're speculative commodities, right? Which means that anything you say about them, if you have a big enough platform and you are, believed to be a credible enough source, you can actually affect the market, right? And so you have this man who's not making money on Tesla. He's making money on cryptocurrency, but he's also able to go, onto Twitter and say, hey, everybody buy Dogecoin. Dogecoin's great. Or now we're not into Bitcoin anymore. And, make sure he's sold it before that happens. And so I wonder if, at some point, so far regulators, he's still on Twitter, right? I don't know that he's suffered any very serious consequences as a result. Eventually they're going to have to come back around, right? If it seems like this is the way he makes money. It's not making anything else.
I couldn't agree more. This is a game that it's a rich man's game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you take $1,000 and put it on, Dogecoin at 5 cents a share or 5 cents a coin or whatever you want to call it these days, right? If it jumps up to 50 cents, you're going to make a lot of money comparatively. But if you take $5 million that you didn't care because it was interest earnings from somewhere that you're not even thinking about, and you just say, what the hell, let's see what happens if we invest $5 million on Dogecoin at 5 cents. Now all of a sudden it goes to 50 cents, you can retire. Mm-hmm. You're done. And so it is terrible because regular people, Jane and Joe, who have visions of being an overnight millionaire, go ahead and throw what little bit of money they have at this stuff, while big players like Elon Musk go ahead and game the system and basically allow those newcomers, those regular people, to subsidize his winnings, so to speak.
Yeah. They
suffer the losses, and Elon Musk rides off, the richest man in the world. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, and continue to be worshipped by the same people at the same time. It's a trick, but it is a hell of a trick, and this is sort of like, if you wanted to get sort of poetic about it, say this is kind of what, this is what happens sort of writ large across our society. We end up revering the very people who are fleecing us over and over and over, right? And as I was saying to a previous guest, we've really internalized this idea that we are born into the world deserving basically nothing. And any amount of luxury you can scratch out or pleasure in your life, it's not You don't deserve any of it. If you get it through, hard work and, slaving away for decades, good for you, but it's always a crapshoot, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a life of drudgery and hey, that's just how it is. It's really, there's a cultural aspect to this that's really strong. Well, I want to talk about.
Sounds like you have a headache, Michelle, from all of this.
I don't understand.
You don't have a headache right now?
Nope.
Oh, mystery tax. I was trying to segue you in. It sounds like you're giving yourself a headache here.
Please. I can't.
It's exhausting talking about all this economic inequality that gives people headaches. Maybe that's the mystery that we're trying to solve here.
I want to say something funny. Last night I was on Jen Perlman's 50th birthday anniversary bash, and I was surrounded by big names. Like I had Chelsea Manning on one side of me. I had Nina Turner on there with me. I had Bo of the Fifth Column with me, and I'm trying to think who else was on there. I don't remember the other individual's name, but Tim Black was also on there. And as we're doing this show, Jen and her co-host asked Bo. They were like, "Hey, Bo, don't you think you should talk about MMT sometime?" And Bo stopped and said, "I just don't think people are interested in economics." Okay. And he said that. I think everybody's cool with spending right now. I don't think anybody's complaining about spending. And I'm like, what? Wait. And I said, my comeback to that, and I felt a little sad because this is a guy who I really revere and respect and really would have liked to have heard him say, wow, yeah, I don't know a lot about that, but I'd be happy to learn more. I'd hear that. But what I was hoping, to hear and what I heard were two different things. But the one thing that jumped out, and I think that it's kind of interesting, I said, if you ever listen to another political debate or any news cycle, get yourself some THC gummies or shot glasses, and every time they talk about paying for it or inflation, take a shot. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, if you're not comatose, then something's wrong, because I'm telling you right now, it is the most important subject. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of blown away. I was like, man, this guy, I really love to hear him take it on, because Bo's a really great guy, really smart. Got a really great show, great intake, great takes on different things, but he wasn't having none of that MMT stuff.
No, it is. It is the most important subject, because everything that we are supposedly unable to have is, it comes down to, well, there isn't enough, there isn't enough money. There isn't enough of this. There isn't enough of that. And I think what we really need to do is just challenge how we define enough, challenge how we, talk about the way we resource our entire lives. And then at the same time, challenge what we think that people, deserve. Yeah. Right. And I think I think those two things need to happen simultaneously.
Close the borders. There's no space here in the United States, right?
It's
the same idea.
There's not enough money.
You know who doesn't respect borders? International capital.
Yeah.
Because it goes wherever it wants, right? I mean, that's the whole, the ridiculousness. Again, I mean, to your point, it's like capital can go across borders. It can abuse people. It can travel wherever it wants. It has an endless passport, Michelle.
Bob.
Yes.
You remember I started this segment and I was like, Steve, I promise you, we don't have to talk about economics the whole time.
I try to ocular migraines. I try to give you the pivot. Let's pivot real quick. Steve, if we can steal an extra minute from you.
This is fun for me. I don't even know if it's fun for you, but you're on my show. Damn it. So I'm going to talk about these mystery attacks, because the Washington Post editorial board got into it today. These mysterious attacks that apparently cause a small fraction of U.S. Officials around the world to, I guess, get a headache or feel sick to their stomachs or feel dizzy and experience ringing in their ears. And I'm not going to ignore the fact that the Post says some of these injuries have actually resulted in traumatic brain injuries, which sounds terrible. But let me just describe to you what is an example of one of the attacks the Post is talking about. A military officer serving overseas pulled his vehicle into an intersection. Then he was overcome by nausea and headaches. His 2-year-old in the back seat began crying. The officer pulled away from the intersection, and then he felt better, and then his child stopped crying. And I just, I feel unwell sometimes too, and I just have never assumed that I was being targeted by some kind of mystery energy weapon. And I just have to point out, Gizmodo here has gotten some great headlines out of the saga. One is, show me a directed energy weapon or shut your anonymous NatSec mouth. Anonymous NatSec. I know, right? The Cuban ray guns are in Syria now. Just trust us on this. Two shining examples. But the Post is, the Post is beyond asking questions. It ends its piece with a call to figure out what is happening, take action to stop it, and hold the perpetrators to account. And I just think you got to stop at figure out what's happening, because it might be I don't know. I just wondered if you wanted to comment on the evolution of the story. It's not going away. It's only expanding. It's gone from headaches and tinnitus to symptoms of food poisoning that then in the case in Syria really did turn out to be food poisoning. And it's just such a vague and really literally hypothetical in that this technology has never been publicly demonstrated to exist thing for the Post to be, writing an op-ed about.
I think it's absolutely insane. I mean, look, you can read any 1950s sci-fi magazine or, the early turn of the century sci-fi stuff, and you have the strange-looking alien with the ray gun in his hand and, the pulse cannon, the EMP pulse cannon. Show me the money, man. Let me see this. I'm not one to say that things don't happen, but I am telling you right now, I think that there is a lot of sensationalism out there, and what we don't understand, we create a meaning for. Even if we don't understand it, we create something for it. And I think it's kind of part and parcel with the QAnon phenomenon, and it's not to say that there isn't those things. I want to be crystal clear.
Sure.
But I'm telling you, there's absolutely nothing that I've seen that would make me feel like there is in any way, shape, or form any kind of substantial evidence of this at this point.
It's just, we still don't have a thing that's actually happening. And again, it'll be interesting to see if this goes anywhere. I don't, I wouldn't necessarily predict that, but it does also sort of speak to me of a country that has really embraced its sense of victimhood. And so anything that happens to you that can't be explained otherwise immediately becomes an attack, instead of, who knows, I got a headache for some reason. I have a different kind of allergy here, whatever. I ate something that disagreed with me. I think that is also playing a big part in this. We really are clinging to ever more desperately the sense that we are the victims in the world instead of most often the perpetrators, Steve.
Drop the mic. I mean, I agree.
I wanted to drop the mic after you blessed us with the phrase "garbage wind of nonsense," which I'm going to take for my first album. Steve Grumbine, we're going to let you go, but tell our listeners where they can find Real Progressives, Real Progress in Action, the new Untouchables, all of your great work.
Yes, so thank you for bringing that up. Come to visit us at our website, realprogressives.org. Go under media, and you can capture our Macro and Cheese podcast, we're up to 120 episodes, I think, now. And also the new Untouchables, the first season was 5 episodes. We are getting ready this Sunday, in fact, to film the beginnings of the second season and so it'll be both podcast and video. And this season's going to be very interesting because it's going to focus on the predation in minority communities and the things that happened with the victims of the elite control fraud that we detail in great pain in the first season. And so it's going to be interesting, I believe, to see how many people and how many ways this elite control fraud is perpetrated on unsuspecting victims, such as you and I even. So you can find the new Untouchables on our website as well. We're looking for people to follow us on YouTube, help our channel grow. We focus all of our energy on Facebook, so we'd really love to see the YouTube world grow. If you all haven't followed us, please do. And that's about it. And then you can find me here because this is my second home away from home.
Aw, that's cool. We'll be sure to have you back on again. Thanks for joining us again today.
Thank you so much. Have a great one, you all.
You too. Have a great weekend. And of course, you heard Steve today on Political Misfits on Radio Sputnik. We're live in DC, and we'll be right back.